Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Tiebreak. I'm Aaron Kumar, and I'm delighted to say that once again I'm joined by my good friend, the editor of Cricket World, John Pennington. John, how are you today?
Very well, thank you, Aaron. Keeping up to date with all the sport that's going on today. Busy day as ever.
It surely is, John. And let's start with the cricket. I mean, obviously Virat Kohli with the bat got into some good form again yesterday, but I think the cricket news has more been dominated by events off the field, hasn't it, John?
It's been a disappointing week really because Virat Kohli obviously played very well. So did Marlon Samuels in that fourth one-day international in Dharamshala, but it has obviously been overshadowed by the fact that the West Indies have confirmed that they won't be playing any further part in the tour. The players, the board, the Players Association are locked in this sort of impasse about pay, basically, and there's this. The BCCI obviously very shocked and disappointed that they've already roped in Sri Lanka to play a short ODI series to sort of cover the shortfall, and there could potentially be some serious consequences to this. Of course, the sort of threat yesterday that maybe the West Indian players wouldn't be allowed to be playing in the IPL, or the BCCI may sue the West Indies for lost revenues, and that's money that the West Indies don't have. So it's a very disappointing escalation of events. We knew there were problems with the West Indies, the way that they were not being paid properly, and it is unfortunately something that does keep on happening. At least two times before there's been contract crisis. On those occasions they've managed to keep playing by sending a weaker team, and on this occasion the BCCI said that's not acceptable. The WICD said well fair enough, and they've been left with no option but to end the tour. Aaron, what do you make of it as a West Indian and an Indian fan? I suppose you must be disappointed as the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely, JP. I think, first of all, from a cricketing point of view, it's sad, isn't it? Because it was just shaping up to be a really good series. The West Indies are playing some really good cricket right at the start of the series. Obviously, you say Marlon Samuels looked in really good form, and it just seemed really well set. Obviously, you say Kohli was coming back into form. It's really, really sad to see what's gone on. I mean, it's not the first time it's happened in West Indies cricket. I'm thinking back to even 2005 when we had the Digicel fallout, if you remember, and then a lot of the key players weren't there. And even before that, when we had the times of Brian Lara and Carl Hooper, there was falling outs of the board. There were rumblings, weren't there, JP, that were going on. But to actually see it happen, it's really, really sad, and especially a few months before the World Cup as well.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, isn't it? Because they're due now to go to South Africa, but they won't send a weekend team there because they get absolutely hammered, and then you have the issue if they try and send a weekend team to the World Cup. Well, that doesn't do any good for the World Cup or indeed the global game. I mean, it does seem almost as if the WICB are making it very clear that it's the players who have almost caused this, because this is trivial, but nobody really wants to upset the BCCI because we all know that they are so dominant in terms of world cricket. So let's hope the consequences aren't too severe, and we can be sort of talking about cricket on the field, because that is the only major series that's been going on this week, and it's not happening anymore, which is obviously very disappointing.
No, absolutely, JP. And I think I'll just thinking back as well, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2009, due to some dispute, didn't the West Indies send out a weaker team for the Champions Trophy?
They did. That was in South Africa as well. They didn't disgrace themselves, but there was, I think before that they played Bangladesh with a very weak team, and they've actually got beaten at home. And I think a few of the players came back, but they didn't all come back to that Champions Trophy. So it wasn't a great spectacle. It's a shame that we've sort of arrived back at the same sort of situation once again. Never good to see a tour abandoned for any reason, political or otherwise. So let's hope next week we can be talking about some cricket on the field. We've actually got South Africa playing New Zealand, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, and Australia, Pakistan. So fingers crossed will be a bit better next week. Let's move on to tennis, Aaron. We spoke last week about Andy Murray and his plans for the rest of the season. Just give us an update on how he's gone this week.
He's done fairly well so far, JP. I think obviously we were a bit concerned for him, the fact that he played so much in the Far East and he's gone to Europe. He's had a bit of rest. I think obviously the organisers saw that he'd travelled so far, and he didn't play his first match till 2 days ago on Thursday, and he played Popisil from Canada, who's had a bit of an up and down year. He's a top 50 player, and you'd expect Murray to win fairly comfortably. It was fairly comfortable for a first match, 4-4. And then yesterday he got Scruff from Germany, who, again, a very solid kind of top 100 player, hasn't really had any big wins, and Murray got past him to a 6-2, 7-5. It's all falling quite nicely into place for Murray, because he plays a bit later on in the semis today against Viktor Troicki, who actually is having quite a good year. He was banned for 18 months due to not attending a drug test, and his ranking dropped down to 800. He's actually back to 120 now, which is actually quite a quick rise in a few months from 800 back to 120. But Murray's got a 5-0 head-to-head against him, and he's always been fairly dominant against Troicki, so he'll be fairly confident of winning. And then you'd expect Ferrer to be the favourite to win his semi. I think he's up against Tobias Kamke of Germany. So it really is getting quite exciting, JP, for the race to London, because Milos Raonic, who currently holds that 8th spot, who's from Canada, he was playing a tournament over in Moscow and he lost early. So Murray's gained 25 points on him, and if Murray was to win tomorrow the final, he'll actually be up to 8th place, which didn't really seem likely a few weeks ago. So provisionally he could actually take 8th tomorrow.
Yeah, we were almost a little bit critical of him, weren't we, last week? But as you say there, as the points will work out, he may well have the last laugh.
Absolutely, JP. And then what I was hearing some news today, I think Marin Cilic is into the semis in Moscow, but that's not too relevant because I'll explain a bit about that later. Wawrinka qualifying almost puts Cilic through anyway, so he's not actually a direct rival to Murray. But I'm hearing that Cilic and Nishikori are both pulling out of Valencia due to kind of slight niggles next week. So again, that does open up the draw. I haven't seen the draw, but with those two out, obviously it is going to be more opportunities for Murray and Valencia potentially as well. So all of a sudden things are looking good, and then there's talk that Nadal's not 100% he's going to play London either. He may go and have surgery. So it's looking better and better for Murray there, that he could actually make the O2 after all, which would be a phenomenal effort from where he was, even if you think back to Wimbledon.
And any other sort of headlines you want to bring us up to date in the world of tennis, Aaron?
I mean, I think Dimitrov's going to have it difficult. This time last year is where he started to make a bit of a splash. He won his first title in Stockholm. He's come back to the semis, but he's around 200 points behind Murray in the race. Now, even if he wins Stockholm, he's going to get 250. So you'd think one of those two is going to have an amazing run, Dimitrov or Ferrer in the Masters in Paris to have any chance. And just the last thing really, JP, like I was saying, Wawrinka's now qualified in his... Basically, it's a top 8 go through. But if you win a Grand Slam and you're outside the top 8, you can still make it as long as you're the top 20. Of course, we had a situation where it briefly looked, although Wawrinka was fairly solid top 8, we had Wawrinka and Cilic, and there was talk of those two both being outside the top 8 but in the top 20. Well, in that case, the highest ranked of those two would qualify. But last week, Wawrinka sealed his place in the top 8 by right, if you like. So Cilic is almost certainly there now as well, because it's almost impossible for him to fall out of the top 20. So that's pretty much 2 more places that are locked up now. So yeah, it's pretty much hotting up in the tennis world, JP. And I know we've been talking about comebacks the last few weeks, and there's a couple in rugby you wanted to tell us about.
There was. I mean, this week obviously you introduced me as Cricket World Editors, but been sort of helping out our friends at Talking Rugby Union. But www.talkingrugbyunion.co.uk, shameless plug there. And this week it's all got very exciting because we've got the start of the new European rugby season, European Rugby Champions Cup, roughly analogous to the Champions League in football, and the European Rugby Challenge Cup, which is the analogous to the Europa League, if you like. All very much changed this year. I'm not going to go into detail now because we'll run out of time, but to note a piece for the website a little bit of explaining the differences, because a lot of political wrangling about changing it all for this year, so it's a little bit better for everybody concerned. But one of the best game of the tournament so far by quite some way was Edinburgh. They travelled to Bordeaux-Daglés in France last night. Very, very difficult for English, Scottish, Welsh and Irish teams to go down to France and win. It doesn't happen very often. They were 13-5 down, and they came back to win despite having a man sinned in during that time. So a really impressive fight back from them. And then today, we've just seen, possibly one of the best games of the year between Australia and New Zealand in the third and final Bledisloe Cup clash. Australia, I'm looking at my notes, I've just written them out. They were 25-15 up going into the last quarter. New Zealand again had a man sinned in, but they came back to win with the final play of the game to take the score to be 1 point down, and Colin Slade nailed the conversion to win it with the prop in the red serve, if you like. So another remarkable comeback, but they just keep producing it, New Zealand. They did it against Ireland last year. They are the best. It sounds stupid, but they just play for 80 minutes, and so many times they seem to be stronger at the end than other teams. But it was another fine comeback, because Australia actually played exceptionally well, putting aside a lot of off-field issues to produce a strong performance. So possibly the game of the year, but also an impressive comeback from New Zealand as well.
Brilliant, JP. It's funny, it just continues that theme, doesn't it, about about comebacks and teams hanging in there. There's been quite a few in recent times.
There have, and I was talking a couple of weeks ago, wasn't like that how Cardiff came from well behind to draw with Connaught, so that's going to be interesting to see how if they can kick on from that. But New Zealand, they are just phenomenal. They are the best team in the world. We know that they won the last World Cup in number one, but they did lose that time out against South Africa. So it looked as if for a long period in the game, because Australia performed very, very well, they were going to go down to two defeats in a row, which hasn't happened in an awful long time. But they just showed such reserves of strength, determination, and everything else you need to produce a good comeback, and they delivered again. So England take them on in a few weeks' time, and they're going to have to play for the entire game and see if they can repeat their win of a couple of years ago against them. So they're going to have their work cut out. And I think we're going to finish on a sport that we don't usually spend an awful lot of time discussing, baseball.
That's right, JP, and it's been quite an interesting time. Obviously, it's a bit of a blind spot for me, but I was just keeping up with it, and I see that the Kansas City Royals, for the first time in a number of years, have qualified for the World Series, and they're up against the San Francisco Giants. And quite interesting, I think both have won their respective series to get there, with a few matches to spare. So a lot of fans are looking forward to potentially being watching some baseball over the weekend, but there's actually no baseball for 4 days now because they were so dominant. So I think the World Series starts on Tuesday, and I guess we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And all you tie-break fans, let us know, how you see that going. I think, by memory, I think the San Francisco Giants, someone did tweet us and say that they were responsible for one of the best comebacks. So again, we can't get too far away from this comeback theme. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes.
No, I mean, I'm no great fan of baseball. I don't have a great deal of baseball knowledge. They play an awful lot of games, don't they? I know that much, though.
Say that again, JP?
I'd say I don't know an awful lot about baseball, but I believe they play some every other day, don't they?
Yeah, the series go. Yeah, exactly. The series is very long, and they pretty much play continuous when a series is going. So, and it's funny because I was watching a little bit when I was over in the States, and I know some of the Americans laugh at Test cricket being five days and thinking, but actually baseball, I mean, you can almost get into a bit of a deadlock, especially if you keep foul balling and there's no strikes. But there's a lot. It's quite tactical. I can see certain similarities to cricket. Of course, there's lots of differences as well. So, but it's always interesting to kind of like look at new sports and kind of see how, how they could potentially have been at one stage, related to another sport as well.
I think they held a sort of demonstration down in Australia not too long ago. Was it the MCG or something? I think it went down really well. I might be wrong on that.
No, I think you are. I think I do remember hearing about that too, JP. Yeah.
Demonstration or engagement, it went down quite well. But that was about the only ground you could hold it in big enough, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. So, brilliant. Well, JP, once again, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure as always.
And guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to keep tweeting us all your sporting views and your best comebacks, and who you think's going to win the World Series. And we'll see you again next time.